Herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von Schieders Melange und diesmal werden wir gleich mal auf Englisch wechseln, denn mein Gast ist ein italienischer Kollege aus dem Europaparlament und wir werden uns auf Englisch unterhalten. So, Fabio Massimo Castaldo, welcome to our Melange today.
Vielen Dank, thank you very much, dear Andreas.
And we have to say it is Melange, what we call, and not Cappuccino, but they are, let's say, sisters, huh? Coffee sisters.
We do accept also the alternatives.
But Cappuccino only until which time?
Until 11 maximum, because otherwise, you know, in Italy it's a kind of very tricky situation.
Yeah.
We can tolerate that from our friends coming from abroad, but it looks very weird.
Last time I was in Italy, I told my, she ordered a cappuccino in the afternoon. I said, be careful, they will kill you.
It's a kind of breach of constitutional order
Exactly.
or even a sin, I would say.
Okay, so maybe we introduce you a little bit to our watchers. You are 1985 born.
Yes.
In famous eternal city of Rome.
Exactly.
So you're quite young, 38 years in the European Parliament, and being so young, you already have a high career. You hold some bachelors and masters, which you had been in the Italian assistant in the Italian Senate.
Senate, yes.
And member of the European Parliament since 2014.
Yes, so it's my 9.5 year of service.
So more or less a decade. And you had been Vice President of the European Parliament, the youngest one.
Yes, and the only one who has been elected as an independent.
Exactly. This is the other point. You are here in the European Parliament without any group, political fraction.
Unfortunately, I would say.
Because you are from Cinque Stelle.
Yes.
Which is how you would describe Cinque Stelle politically in one sentence?
Well, and on social and environmental issues, is very progressive. Of course, we have also specific attention for small, medium, and micro business company because they are the most important and productive part of the Italian economy. But at the same time, we are a movement really pro-transparency, pro-fight against corruption, fight against organized crime. So that's how we were rising around the idea to have a clean list, so to prevent people that has been convicted and condemned.
Which
for
happens in Italian politics.
Unfortunately, yes. Now a bit less than before because of our pressure. When we were in the government, we approved many anti-corruption laws.
Cinque Stelle was in the last government and is now in opposition.
Now we are in opposition. We have been in majority of the three last governments in the previous term.
Yeah. But why we are talking here is Fabio Massimo became a good friend due to our work, because we regularly meet in election observation mission, and I thought could be a good issue to point out a little bit this tremendous work which is done in the European Parliament and the European Union on election. And Fabio was EU chief observer in Zimbabwe, which EU chief observer is the highest. And Zimbabwe, let's say, was very complicated elections.
It was. First of all, let me say that it's always a huge honor and pleasure to share this important mission together with my friend Andreas, that has been my fantastic head of delegation also in Bosnia and Herzegovina for the election in Sarajevo, and then also he was beside me in this important challenge of the elections in Zimbabwe. It was a mission that since the very beginning was a borderline, because we know that unfortunately since the coup d'etat that was dethroning Mugabe, the situation really didn't change and improve. There were a lot of expectations 5 years ago to see finally Zimbabwe coming back to the track of democracy, with a pluralist environment, but unfortunately the ZANU-PF, the party in power since the revolution, is still holding and grabbing the power, and it's also, it was creating a certain climate of fear, pressure. That's something we both experienced very well, because you should know that what is an electoral observation mission? It's a mission in which we are trying to follow each one of the single steps of the electoral cycle, and we are going to assess them. Of course, it's not our job to do certification, but of course we are giving elements to let understand the general public and the European Union if more or less the regional and international principles have been respected and fulfilled, and at the same time you are doing recommendation to the government to improve.
But this is, I think, is an important point, because very often people think observation means to go there on the election day, visited some polling stations, and say if it was perfect or a disaster. But this is different, because this means your mission started
much earlier,
weeks, months before.
Exactly, that's the key point, especially when we are holding a European Union electoral observation mission, because in Europe, for example, with the countries of Eastern Partnership, Western Balkans, we are cooperating with the OECD and the ODIHR, and therefore we have a bit different methodology. But when we are organizing by ourselves, we are really monitoring by ourselves since the very beginning. That means that we are deploying the mission even 2 or 3 months before, with a core team of analysts that are covering political, legal, media, all possible areas.
Watching the campaign rallies.
Watching the way in which the legal order is implemented or not, if there are breach of law. And that's what, unfortunately, we observed in Zimbabwe, because we've seen acts of violence, acts of political pressure, threats to the electors, especially many attempts to block the rallies of the opposition coalition, and also what was shocking both me and you and all the other colleagues, because we had a big delegation of MEPs. There was even an assault from the special police that was arresting people of the civil society in front of us in the headquarters of the mission in the Holiday Inn Hotel, and they were really trying to crack down the most important.
This was because I was already, as I'm always a very decent person, I was already in my room trying to sleep. No, I just came before, and then I remember you called me at 1 o'clock, something like this, on the election evening, in the hotel, and they arrested.
In total, 39 in total, all across the capital of Zimbabwe, that is Harare. But the point is that they were those poor youngsters, because we're speaking about youngsters of 25, 26, 23, 30 maximum years old. They belong to a very respected and prominent organization of civil society that is observing at the local level.
People from Zimbabwe, which were observing the elections as an NGO.
Yes, and they were all across the large majority of number of polling stations, and in fact the government was fearing that with the data they collected, they could have announced the real results that happened, and that's why they cracked them down before they could have all the data, the collation of the data, and they also sized their server, their hard disk, everything. So they really prevent them to do their job. And I would like to remember that they were accredited by the electoral body. They did all by the book
really
on the procedure.
Official NGO?
Yes. And also they are part of international network that is under the control and under the scrutiny of the UN. So we have no doubt that those people were very serious in their job, but apparently the government was. And
we should maybe mention at this point that the election day was very chaotic, because the election committee could not open all the polling stations because they did not deliver the papers on time.
Exactly. It was
and people were queuing all night.
It was something for us very weird, because by chance that happened exactly in the strongholds of the opposition. That means the capital Harare, Bulawayo, that is the second city in the south, then in the eastern part close to Mozambique, in which there are minorities that are against that are being oppressed by the government, so they are quite in support on the opposition. And we observed in some cases that the polling stations were opening almost more than 24 hours later, even 30 hours later, and that of course undermined the possibility for all the electors to express their will to express their vote, because of course it's difficult for a mother with a very young child to stay one whole day there, but it's difficult, I would say, for each one of us. I was questioning who of our electors in Austria, in Italy, in Europe would have waited 30 hours to vote.
How many would wait 1 hour, let's say?
Yeah, 1 hour would be even too much. But in that case, it was what I really admire. It was the commitment of these people. There were even elder people say, "We are going to stay here until we will vote, because it's our duty. We want to see a different future for this country." And well, unfortunately, we saw since the very beginning a lack of cooperation by the competent bodies. For us, it's extraordinary. You know better than me, because you have a long experience in this domain, that the competent electoral body, the so-called ZEC, Zimbabwe Electoral Committee, refused to meet us. They didn't want to have an exchange with us. So that shows since the very beginning they were not in good faith, and they didn't want really to cooperate to give us all the information for a real assessment.
The people, because really it was a great show of the people of Zimbabwe, that they like democracy and that they probably want to see some change. But at the end, they didn't see any change, we have to say.
No, at all. They didn't see any change. And at the same time, also, they were very frustrated, because everything has been done since the very beginning to ensure that the result that would have been announced would have been coherent with the expectation of the government. And now also we are very worried, because the mission itself was victim of a huge defamation campaign since the very beginning. There were articles in the pro-government medias and state control TV medias, notably the Herald. There's a new famous newspaper there that were describing us like people with an agenda, that were jeopardizing the process. They even accused us without any proof or element to bribe that we were bribing journalists to speak against the government. That was simply ridiculous, and we defended ourselves very clearly. We protected our people on the ground, was most important. But I would say that we would have expected from the EU delegation a bit more action, a bit more commitment. We were a bit surprised to see that our ambassador there was not so loud in his defense.
It's also true. But maybe before, because I think what we need to discuss also is how to deal in the future with the country. But you had to produce a long and very detailed report, and also to explain to people the elections had been in August, and the report will be now finished, finalized, and then presented also to all stakeholders in Harare in Zimbabwe again.
The report is finalized. I can announce that now officially. We are expecting to hold a big press conference at the half of November. So from 15 to 18, I should be there again on the ground to try to organize this press conference. But already together, just after 2 days after the election, me and Andreas, we had a big important press conference there that was really followed by all the medias of the state.
And also we have to say we managed that those guys which were arrested got released.
And that was the most important thing, because seeing that there was not such a strong pressure officially from the EU delegation, we decided to have this announcement, and notably Andreas, because being chief observer, I had to stay really to the electoral cycle, not bypassing my perimeter, but you as head of the delegation, you had a bit more flexibility, and that was very important. Almost all our colleagues were very strong on this, and thanks to the clear, strong statement you had and we endorsed on the fate of these poor youngsters, on the fact that for 12 hours they didn't have any legal advice and support. They've been deprived even to speak with their family, with lawyers and so on. Our strong statement help in getting them, setting them free. After 2 hours, they've been liberated. So it means that our voice matters, can make the difference when we are brave enough to use it.
In this, I think it was also very important that this mission was working, and that you had been present also the weeks before, so that also we could prove it's not that some Europeans showing up and demanding. It is an intensive work with the situation in the country. But also we have to say, also the other African observer organizations also were really shocked by what happened in this country. But maybe at the end of our short talk, how we should deal in the future with countries like Zimbabwe after having seen this election?
Well, first of all, I think it's important for us to make a clear distinction between the relationship with the governments and the relationship with the civil society and the local leadership and the people on the ground. Because in some cases, and this is a bit the case, we know that the relationship with the present governments is extremely complicated. We know that there are massive interference and agendas from Russia and China on the ground. Yes. We were seeing a lot of very significant presence of China economically and on Russia, even on security domain and with a political strong ties and cooperation with the ruling party. And the key point is that we have to, in my opinion, to push for widespread projects that can really improve the quality of life of people on the ground. Mm-hmm. That's the good way to present the European Union as a real, genuine actor that is dealing mostly and most importantly with the faith of the persons, with the idea that we have to give them a better quality of life, better access to fundamental services, and this can really foster a new European model that is not based on the idea, as the Chinese one, of massive infrastructure that are destroying all the environment, and often they are not benefiting the local communities, but it's dealing really with the need of the persons. I think those alternative channel can make the difference.
But for this we have to change some things, and one is also that, for example, the EU mission, the EU ambassador there must be seen by the people also as an ambassador which is connecting with them and not only with the regime in the country.
Exactly. We should not be seen as those one of the business as usual. Yeah. Should be seen of those one who are standing always beside the civil society, always beside the free voices that are trying to create the ground to build up, in general, a democratic, pluralistic, open society, not in the way that unfortunately we are often observing in some kind of authoritarian countries. And we should not be seen as those one who are trying to put under the carpet all the behaviors from the government, because otherwise we will lose credibility. And it's a kind of game in which our competitors will always win, because Russia, China, they do not have any concern about rule of law, about democracy. It's not in their model. We have to defend this. We have
I think maybe because sometimes we get asked for what to spend the money and all this work in continents far away from home. But this is, I think, if we want to preserve our model of living, of democracy, we have also to do this work, because we saw in Zimbabwe how it is a global battle with the Chinese and the Russians there.
It was so clear.
You are a long experienced observer. You also observed Tunisia, as far as I remember. Also not easy.
Twice
even.
I was chief observer. I was normal observer in Tunisia in 2014. Chief observer in 2018 for a local election, and 19 for presidential and national one.
Oh, so you would say, what is more complicated, Zimbabwe, Tunisia?
Different context. In my opinion, Tunisia had a fantastic potential, because they have a very strong and vibrant civil society, high level of education, so they have all the elements to grow up a strong democracy. But unfortunately, the expectation of the people after the revolution were very high, also in social and economic terms. They say, we are making this revolution not simply for political and civil rights issues, but also for social and economic justice. And those expectations has been not fulfilled and not met by mistakes also of the parties that were too much following tacticism of short sight instead of commit themselves to the huge reform the country needs. And now, unfortunately, the evolution of the country is really worrisome. We have seen that last election were basically based on a jeopardized constitutional and legal framework, because the current president changed the constitution without following the normal procedure and destroying the balance of power that was in the constitution of 2014. And at the same time, we have observing a constant increase of the crackdown of the civil and space of freedom of expression, freedom of opinion. I'm really sad and concerned, because I thought that Tunisia could become the great model for the Islamic world, for the Arab world, the model that could have give hope to the civil society of those countries, and it could have showed that Islam and democracy are not incompatible, as some conservative regimes, authoritarian regimes, and conservative monarchies are trying to present. And unfortunately, with all this joint pressure from outside and inside the country, now it's more and more degrading itself towards an authoritarian regime. So it means that all these big efforts that has been done during the revolution are a bit totally vanishing. Unfortunately.
Yeah, the Arab Spring is
yes,
is not led into a shiny summer.
No, and it's not giving a long-standing result. On the contrary, I'm very sorry and concerned because Tunisia has a very highly educated young generation that want to meet this expectation. But of course, democracy is very fragile and is a seed that you have to put on a fertile ground and work very hard to let it grow up solid and safe. But the point is that here maybe we also lack a bit of ambition as you. We should have mobilized more funds, more engagement on the ground to help
also
them. Also from our side, I think.
Okay, so you last question maybe. You still, because we are anyway half a year before the European election, or 8 months before the European election. You're still planning some observer missions?
Of course, there is one that I really would like to do, if it's possible, the one in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That is going to be crucial because the RDC...
It's just before Christmas.
Yes, just before Christmas, and then RDC is a crucial state in sub-Saharan Africa with a lot of resources and potential, with a very big and growing population, but unfortunately with terrible problems of violence, presence of warlords, illegal mining, poverty, famine. This is a country that is a huge challenge and can really represent for us the mirror of the geopolitics we would like to have.
Exactly.
It's up to us to show that we would like to build up an image that is meeting our expectation and ambition. And I think this mission especially could be very important. There will be many prominent candidates. Among them, Denis Mukwege, our Sakharov Prize of 2014.
It's true, 14 Sakharov Prize.
Fantastic person and a real champion of human rights and democracy. So I think it's important to keep a very attentive eye on the ground and to have to mobilize all our means, not simply for the mission itself, but to cooperate and to create a possible new path for a country that is for sure decisive for the balance and for the future of the whole continent.
Perfect. So you can see the world of an European, or the work of a European, a member of the European Parliament is very broad. Tunisia, Zimbabwe, the Democratic Republic of Congo, but of course also Brussels, Europe, Rome, Vienna, and all these places.
Western Balkans, which we have been, because being Austrian and Italian, they are our neighbors, and we know that we have an historical a moral duty to help them to integrate within the European Union.
And also there we see it's very fragile.
Yeah.
We came to an end. Also our melange already tastes a little bit like water. And I want to thank you, Fabio Massimo Castaldo. So who wants to know more about these issues or read Fabio's report? You just have to Google European Parliament Election Observation Mission, Castaldo or Zimbabwe, and you find everything. And
very soon it's going to be published after the press conference. So you can go into detail and to learn more about the situation, but also about our methodology, how we are trying to deliver good results. And this time, let me end up with a very important message. Cooperation really worked because SADC, the regional organization that was also monitoring the election, and African Union did report much in line with ours. And I think that this unity from EU and AU can be the key factor to preserve our commitment to democracy and rule of law, and to preserve also a huge will to develop multilateralism and to develop a culture of dialogue in a world that is becoming more and more conflictual and more, unfortunately, hostage of the culture of military power projection. That's something we have really to fight against altogether.
Perfect. Or not perfect, but at least the European Union is active. Thank you, Fabio Massimo. Thank you for watching. Alles Liebe, bis zum nächsten Mal.
Thank you. Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Prost.